Hi guys, welcome back to the Film Council. This week we're going over Neorealism. The Neorealism film movement was founded during the reign of Benito Mussolini, an Italian fascist dictator in the mid-20s to 40s. In the 1930s, Mussolini saw film as a cultural institution, not just a tool for propaganda, and thus he nurtured filmmaking by creating the Venice Film Festival, opening a film school, and a cinema studio. Even though Neorealism got its start 20 years before the French New Wave, the two had very similar origins, and Neorealism inspired key figures in the French New Wave. Filmmakers wanted to break the mold of the time and develop stories from another angle. Thus we see the birth of Neorealism.
Example of Italian neorealism is Bike Thief. For the editing and the cinematography, there are generally long takes and pans, even from the beginning of the movie, to make the cinematography and editing not as distracting, but rather immersive and realistic, which then reinforces the realistic aspect of the film, which makes it fit into the genre. Also, what is evident from the start of the film is the use of shot-reverse shot between Richie and the character employing people. This could be a symbol of the employer versus the worker, where it was extremely tough to even provide for a family, with the conversation entailing that there would be difficulties in keeping Richie's new job, making it a representation of themes such as poverty and social depression. Even in the ending of the film, the long take is effectively used to capture that depression, especially with Richie being arrested with a mid-shot of his son walking towards him crying. This shows how the outbreak of World War II and its consequences cost more to the individual, where innocence from a child has been violently wiped out from the disruption caused by reality. What is also really evident in The Bicycle Thief is the location of the movie, where it explicitly shows a characteristic of Italian neorealism, a real Italian setting of a war-torn city, which adds emphasis to the struggle of poverty, a common theme in Italian neorealism. There's even locations such as brothels which show how the film is not afraid to show real aspects of Italian society. Also, specific props such as the bike serve as a motif, where from the start it symbolized the extreme hardships of poverty. Antonio Ricci has to have a working cycle, which seems impossible when looking at his frustrated performance with his wife, Maria. Soon after, we can see Maria rapidly taking the bed sheets off the bed in desperation just for Ricci to trade it in for a bike. This definitely highlights the struggle of great poverty after the war. Also, when looking at the sound of the movie, we can hear a lack of non-diegetic music, which, like the editing, allows a sense of realism to the movie. It forces us to be in that post-World War II reality. It also allows the audience to hear the dialogue of the scenes. For instance, we can hear the great hopelessness and frustration from Richie when he gives the unfortunate news to Maria that job requires a bike he couldn't pay at the time. However, there are still some use of orchestral-like non-diegetic music in very emotional moments in the film. For example, though it may seem insignificant, but when Richie lost the thief, there was a sort of sorrowful orchestral music which gives the audience a psychological insight to the mind of Richie. It seems that from every corner from society, from the rich to the poor, Richie constantly is oppressed and ridiculed. Overall, the main mood that this film produces is this feeling of depression and hopelessness. As said before, it feels like every societal force is against Richie, a father trying to just provide for his family after the devastating impact of World War II. What makes this movie so touching to so many members of the audience is through the use of realism through the film, where we either sympathize with Richie or we relate to him with a theme of real human suffering.
Ciao Bru, se vediamo stasera alle 7, aspettami qua, eh.
Ciao papà!
Ciao.
Ciao papà!
Ciao.
Buongiorno!
In 1924, filmmaker Robert Flaherty moved his attention to Iran, which was on the west coast of Ireland. His film, Man of Iran, would go on to be heavily criticised for its apparent distortion of reality. The film was seen as more of Flaherty's version of life than how it really was. Flaherty's films were more personal and more so than any other documentary pioneers. His films had also much more to say about the subjectivity of life. The film's sound was completely created in post-production, making the entire film non-diegetic. This, however, did create a poetic atmosphere to the film and the images within it, making the story seem to flow more naturally. As seen in the clip, the film is dominated with water. The quick cuts intensify the sense of doom at the hands of these big crashing waves. At times, the waves seem to be so overpowering it would feel as though the spectator is going to be submerged, which thus makes them more immersed in the film. Man of Iran links to Neorealism as it depicts the locals of Iran in their natural state and way of life. This links to Neorealism themes of representing the poor and working classes. While it can be argued that the film is not neorealistic because of manufactured scenes such as the shark hunting scene and also the lack of religion, which was very prevalent at the time in Ireland, it can be argued that the use of costumes that the Irish wear are an accurate portrayal of normal clothes, thus making the film feel somewhat real. The people are completely covered up, which does adhere to the conservative Catholicism that ruled Ireland at the time. The themes being represented in this film are the idea of nature and the sublime. Flaherty sets out to show the immensity of nature in its representation against man. The use of local Irish people at the time was simply to take the film to a more grounded level and show audience the will of nature overcoming the power of normal people. This hits home to people sitting in the audience and reminds them of their place in nature.
Hello, Patty. Hold on.
Dai, Benino, Dio
Forza, Tiger. Up, follow. Up she comes. Come on, keep her. This time, lad. Steady. Steady, lady. Steady, lady. Upwards and all that.
Thanks for watching our short video essay of Italian neorealism. Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe. Goodbye.